we're going to be doing an installation of subsill. Various things that we have to consider. We're going to have to consider the levelness of the opening, and we want to know that ahead of time in both directions. So one of the things that will cause issue is if your subsill is sloped in. When you set the frame, it'll create a gap between the subsill and the frame on the back, which we do not want. If anything, that subsill should be tilted slightly towards the outside, but in perfect conditions it would be level. So we want to make sure that wherever we're installing the subsill is in level in both directions. If not, we'll have to compensate with the shimming. As you can see, this particular opening, the concrete slopes in. So what we'll do, we'll add a small shim on the back side to create that subsill to be level in both directions. The other thing we'll do, and I've already done it in this opening, is measure the overall height. In the drawings, it's meant to be a 120-inch rough opening, which would give us 3/8 of shimming underneath the subsill. But this particular opening is a little large. It's 120 1/4, so it's a 1/4 inch bigger than what was figured. We will split that difference and we'll add 1/8 of an inch to the shims underneath the subsill, which is going to give us a 1/2 inch under the subsill. Now, with different subsills, the design will be a little different. FCO, in many instances, will put the subsill directly down in the concrete. And if we're within 1/8 of an inch of the concrete, then we are going to set our frame in a bed of caulking. And we'll put that bed of caulking directly behind the anchor holes. That will create, so if any water penetrates through the anchors or end dams, there's another line of caulking that will ensure that it stays watertight. With us being a 1/2 inch up, we're not going to set it in a bed of caulking. We will caulk the front and we will caulk the back, and that will create a watertight system. So there's multiple ways of figuring on how to anchor these subsills. Particularly in concrete, I like to mark the holes and then drill. So please give me a subsill. In this case, we are going to center the subsill into the opening, which gives us basically a 1/4 inch on each side. And like I said, there's two ways. We could leave this subsill in place and drill our holes. And what that's going to do is going to create a lot of concrete in our sill pan. A lot of times I will like just to mark the holes. Once they're marked, I'll pull the subsill out of the way so that my subsill will remain clean. If I hammer drill with the subsill in place, all the concrete's going to fill in there, and we can empty it out and clean it off, but to save time, I typically will mark the holes, pull the subsill out of the way, and then with silica and the new OSHA standards, with silica dust, we have purchased a hammer drill with a HEPA filter. And this actually has a small vacuum self-contained unit that will pull the dust up into and out of the way. So we will go ahead and hammer drill. So you can stop for that right now. So we're back. We have our holes drilled. We're ready to install the subsill. We have everything anchored. The next thing is going to be shimming. And because we've already pre-measured this opening and we know what our shimming has to be, we're going to be up a 1/2 inch. And like I said, this sill is sloping back, so as we put our 1/2 inches in there, we were going to put a 1/16 shim on the back to get our subsill level and flat and not sloping inward to the building. Okay, so we're shimmed up. We're ready for the installation of the subsill. Making sure it's clean. We have it already shimmed up. We have it set in place. Son, I can't even see. Okay, one more screw to put in. Okay, now that we have it anchored, it's flat, it's sloped in the right direction. So our next thing is to seal it up. Where these subsills will leak will be here at your anchor screws, the end dam on both sides, and the anchor screws. That's where it leaks. If you get this thing sealed up, this should be able to hold water, and you'll have a very watertight sealed system. So as we caulk this, of course, we're going to make sure we're good and clean at all the anchors. No dust, no oil, no debris. We're going to put some caulking in there. We're going to caulk the end dams, right, the back, all along the sides, in between the subsill and the end dam. And then we're going to caulk right up the front, across the top, and of course right up the back, and completely encapsulate this end dam. So we're going to continue to seal this thing up tight. We're going to seal the end dams again, because that's where it's going to leak. So we're coming up the back. We're going to go across the top and down the front. Later on, we will caulk the exterior, the front and back, and this whole subsill will be encapsulated with caulking. And then of course, we're going to tool with a tooling knife. We're going to make sure this thing is watertight and pushed in. And of course, that's what tooling really does, is to ensure that you have a seal I guess I'll explain the reason why I caulk the end dam. The you ever get a leak or you lose adhesion between the caulking and the substrate up the jambs or across the top, and water will come down and actually work its way back into the subsill. It's just a secondary way to prevent water intrusion. So the only thing that would be left is to caulk the front and the back, and after the frame, before the frame is installed, we will run a bead of caulking all along the back of the subsill. Right underneath, they usually have a reglet or a rib that will allow that, and when you put that caulking right at this location, basically that's not for water, it's for air. It will keep air from being forced through the weep holes and through the back, and it'll actually sometimes, if you don't have that bead of caulking in there, your frames will whistle, which means you'll be back taking it apart and redoing it. So that's the end of the installation.